gear moved in. Some are calling the police response heavy-handed, but the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset has defended his force's actions. Karen Bell reports on another night of turmoil.
Anarchy in central Bristol again. Riot police, horses, dogs and a helicopter brought in to shut down a peaceful protest. Scores of extra officers deployed from Wales, Gloucestershire, Devon, Dorset and Wiltshire. The evening had started so differently. People had gathered on College Green to protest about the government's plan to make trespass a criminal offence. They'd set up tents and sound systems, but insisted they meant no harm. Police liaison officers had asked some to disperse, but the protesters didn't move on. And so at 10 o'clock, 100 riot police arrived to do it for them.
You indicated you planned to stay for 1 hour several hours ago. Crowd will now disperse, or force may be used.
Protesters lay down as officers raged through their camp. A splinter group was chased down a nearby street. And then, things ground to a halt.
So it's now 10 to 11 at night and we've reached something of a standoff. The protesters are sitting singing on the ground and looking at them. Police and horses and dogs ready for a full-blown riot.
Protesters we spoke to were angry and upset at what they saw as a major overreaction by the police.
We were singing, doing poetry, and heard the police were coming, so lay on the ground silently, and they started coming in. We've been protesting so peacefully all night, and now they've turned up in full riot gear. I've been pushed over. I've been trampled on by police tonight.
People lay down. It was very scary. They came in closer and closer, started hitting people at the front. So then everyone had to get up and run, and then they charged after us with horses and dogs, and now it's ended up like this.
Police said this gathering with no social distancing was illegal and an insult to everyone who does follow lockdown rules. And they also had this fresh in their minds. The violence of Sunday, which left 21 officers injured and several police vehicles destroyed. That too had started as a peaceful protest on College Green, and last night police weren't taking any chances. In the end, yesterday's scenes were nowhere near as serious as the violent mayhem of Sunday, but after 2 nights of clashes in 3 days, relations between the police and Bristol's protester regulars are now at a dangerously low ebb. Karen Bell, ITV News, Central Bristol.
Well, the head of Avon and Somerset Police held a joint press conference with Bristol Mayor Marvin Rees earlier today. Chief Constable Andy Marsh reiterated that minimum force was used against demonstrators last night. He also said that in the current pandemic, the police have a duty to uphold the law. Victoria Davis has more.
Another night of protesting in Bristol, but this time a more heavy-handed approach by police. Designed, they say, to bring a swift end to this gathering. Today, in a press conference, the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police said he felt it was the correct action to take.
All afternoon we had members of our neighbourhood policing team seeking to persuade those present to engage with them that they needed to disperse. They did know very clearly that we would have to take action. There were tents being put up, there was amplified music, there were glasses and bottles being passed around. It was all the makings of a rave or a party more than a protest. And so we felt we did what we had to, using the minimum of force, and we made 14 arrests. That sort of activity doesn't always look good, but what I would say is it was done professionally and it was necessary.
Police tactics to disperse last night's gathering are being questioned by some, but the Mayor of Bristol said he supported the policing of the protest, especially at a time when COVID rates in the city have increased.
A relief at not seeing the levels of violence that we saw on Sunday night. And also, obviously, as a mayor of the city, seeing the level of risk that I think is being put into the city by crowds gathering still in the pandemic. And so I'm relieved about that. But I have real confidence in the way Andy's gone about policing our city.
Protesting is currently not allowed during lockdown, and while police say they understand people's frustrations, they say they have a duty to uphold the law.
How likely is this to happen again, do you think?
So there is a possibility that there will be more activity in the coming days and weeks. But I would appeal for people to try and find ways to express their unhappiness with whatever it is they're unhappy about in a way that doesn't end up with a large number of people convening that risks COVID infection or conflict and violence in public spaces.
There were no injuries from last night, but with more protests planned, there is concern violent scenes could return to the streets of Bristol. Victoria Davis, ITV News.
Well, with the actions of both the police and the protesters under scrutiny, we've been out on the streets of Bristol today to gauge public reaction to the last few days.
I very much support the protests against the bill. I think it's awful, but unfortunately it feels like perhaps other people ruining it. The message is lost, essentially, I think, when people results of violence and things like that.
I think it's disgusting. And the thing is, if something happens to you, what do you want? Police. And I think it's terrible.
There are a lot of different things happening that we need to be questioning, and protests can't really be shut down. They need to be listened to. So I think, the police being heavy-handed, I'm not surprised, sadly. And it's scary and sad that that's happened.
We've obviously been living under COVID restrictions, so what do you think when you see people having mass gatherings?
Again, it's awful, isn't it, really, Should not be happening, and simple as that. Most people obey to it, and for some reason all these which are in the centre and around there just making up their own rules as they go.
I mean, every protest that I have been to in Bristol and back at home when I was in the first lockdown, everyone was wearing masks. People were social distancing as much as possible. It was never super spreader events. There was never actually any issue, and there was no evidence that it ever spread the virus anymore.
Well, tonight, new pictures have been released of 8 people that police want to trace following the riot at the weekend. Avon and Somerset police have now released a total of 18 pictures as their investigations continue. On to other news now, and organisers of St Paul's Carnival have announced the event will not be going ahead this year. It's the second year running the historic Bristol event has been called off due to the pandemic.